like mobile health solutions, you know what people like Bright Simmons and co are doing. I mean, like, there's a lot of space for new stuff. And even from a scholarship standpoint, there's always been a contestation that, look, for some of the topmost issues in marketing or human resource management or technology, a lot of the African scholarship is missing from global discourse. So even we as academics are pushing now to make very, very fundamental contributions to global discourses on what would otherwise have been mundane and always Western. So I think there's room for innovation. I think we are humanistic. I think we have solid social and personal relationships. And I think those are some of the things that we have going for us. It's not all doom and gloom.
All right, so from your list, I mean, we have retained our human touch, especially in a digitalized, impersonal world. That's your first point. Yes. Second point, you are saying that it's a fertile ground for innovation. There's space for new thoughts, ideas, and concepts. Very much. Compared to contemporaries in the other part of the world that seem to be saturated with very little room for new developments. And the third one, you're saying that we retain a social network. Are those the words you used?
Social and personal relations. They're still very good.
Right. Social and personal relations.
Yes.
Okay. So you think that these are the things that you can point to as our success. You veered into education a bit.
Yes.
Are there models? Are there things that you find that our approach? And I'm pushing you on education because I know it's very dear to your heart, and it's something that is being pointed to as one of the areas that we have to break through in to become what we want to be. If we don't get it right in education, no matter how hard we push, we are literally pushing against the wall.
Very much.
So in the area of education, are there any pointers, are there any bright spots that you as an academic will point to that give you joy?
Absolutely. I mean, look, let's take where I work, for instance. In the 71 years of the existence of the University of Ghana, we are now looking at innovative things like, for instance, we've developed in the first time in our life some sort of customer service policy for the university. Now, in an era where you want to internationalize, you want a higher raft of international students coming to your space. Listen, I was in Brown University 12 days ago speaking about reinventing higher education. And I was speaking about how African universities can build solid international partnerships so they can become more competitive. Nowadays, you can't live only in an introspective mode. You need to look at how to build partnerships. And I think when you take a University of Ghana, we are building stronger corporate governance structures. We are introducing solid enterprise risk management policies. We've just about to inaugurate a new branding and marketing communication policy. So I think that we have so much potential for internationalizing education because, look, I lived in the Gambia 26 years ago. Ghanaians, for instance, are seen as the gem of, if you like, scholarship and industry in the West African sub-region. So I think we have tremendous opportunities for attracting Gambians and Nigerians and Sierra Leoneans into our country to come and buy this educational product. And for what it's worth, other countries are making millions of dollars exporting education at undergraduate, master's, and PhD level. So I think there's so much potential for internationalizing what we do, especially at tertiary level, over and above maybe naming the universities and other related issues. But I'm sure we'll come to that later. Yes.
All right, so that's a little one below the belt, but the point is made that they are saying that there's some potential that is being developed in the area of international relations in the university, building partnerships with other educational institutions, leveraging on that. Even the fact that you mentioned that one as a strategy points to the fact that as a university, there's a bit more of strategic orientation and thinking than the league one I went to in the 1987. Because for you to even say that in the midst of all this, your focus is on how to develop a bigger percentage of international student participation. That level of strategic awareness was not part of the thinking at the time that we went to university. All right, so I would add on the potential for education, but just to say that also in that area, funnily enough, Prof. Simpson, it's an area also that if you compare that to what contemporaries, in the discussion that we had on this show, my friend Grant Bulmore, who's an educationist based in the UK, put on his teenage son on air. We were having a discussion. He's an educationist, and he put his teenage son on air. And as he described the various collaborations with other countries and how it influences his education, it was obvious that even at the basic level, others have taken it to a very high level. And so by now, we shouldn't be talking about potential. We should be talking about the reality. But at least, as you rightly say about fertile ground, it could be some beginning that we could build on.
Very much.
Right. Let me put on board Kofi Bentil, who I suspect has been hijacked by the floods of Accra and is therefore communicating from a different location apart from the studios of Joy 99.7 FM. Kofi, good evening.
Good evening, Albert.
So, for security reasons, I won't ask you where you are, but it's obvious that you plan to be in the studio. But in your journey to the studio, you have been hijacked by circumstances, as they say, beyond your control.
Exactly, and maybe that will feature what we are going to talk about. But yes, I have been on the road for an hour, something that should be like a 30-minute journey.
Let me steer you towards what is positive before we come to what you are happy about. So to start our discussion tonight, we are trying to, for the benefit of our listeners, touch on what is it that we are doing right that could become pointers for improvement. If we said, listen, let's push forward, what are the bright spots that may not even be perfect, but are good takeoff points that we can point to? Prof. Hinson has mentioned the fact that we've retained our human touch in a digitalized, impersonal world. He's talking about the fertile ground for innovation, social and personal relations, and some bright spots in education that could become trigger points for even more improvement. What will be your selection of areas that make you proud to be a black person?
Right. So, regards to Prof. Hinson right there is one of the bright spots. And yes, he's right. I think that our people and our potential, and indeed aspects of our history, okay, should give us as a people a certain sense of what we are capable of. I think that is what Kwame Nkrumah meant when he made that statement. He saw what we could do if we put ourselves to it. And you've seen, therefore, isolations in terms of excellence. You mentioned Kofi Annan, Kwame Nkrumah himself, and a number of people. I mean, Dr. Trebi Olenu, and many people, in other places where, given a certain situation, you realize that the best can absolutely come from, Ghana and Africa and other places. The problem, however, is whether we have taken full advantage of, those potentials, and then also whether we have created the environment for these potentially excellent people and systems to surface. A Harvard economist once said, and it's a new paradigm in development thinking right now. He said that people are not poor. They just live in poor places. And what he meant was that human potential is almost infinite. But you find that depending on their geography, where they are, depending on their social environment, people tend to thrive and excel or just wither and die. And he bases that theory on the fact that if you take the Americas, or especially North America, poor people came from Ireland, from Scotland, from parts of Europe where they were really poor. And they get into America, and in one generation, they become millionaires. And you can see the same thing with other persons who migrate. So, specific to your question, what are the things that are the bright spots we can look at? Our people, our intelligence, potential, people like Prof. Hinson, you drop him anywhere, he will survive. Yourself, So what we need to do is to really question why we have not been able to engineer societies that make that excellence more systemic, more pervasive, more the norm than the exception. As we speak right now, I think whether as nations or as people, excellence looks more like the exception and not the rule, and that is where I have a problem.
21 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock. Prof. Mr. Bentil, stay on the line for a minute. Let me summarize your thoughts so far and go on to the two issues that you have raised. So you're saying so far that our people, our potential, and aspects of our history are the bright spots you can look at also the intelligence of our people. But you ask two very big questions. You're saying that, have we taken advantage of this potential that Nkrumah may have seen at the point where he made this statement? And then you also question the environment. You suggest that, like the parable of the sower, you are saying that a Harvard study suggests that people are not poor, they just stay in poor environments. And you draw on the fact that people from different continents, different places migrate to a more enabling environment, and then in one generation become millionaires. That brings me to a point that was made some time ago in a very, very interesting lecture at the global convocation of Springboard, a speech delivered by Reverend Dr. Mensa Anamwa Utable, who asked the question, onions, Mark Zuckerberg, and environment. And he asked the question, if Mark Zuckerberg had Facebook as an idea at the University of Ghana, would it have become a global phenomenon? Can I throw this into the question and ask you into the mix and ask you the same question against the backdrop of what you just said?
I've said tech.
Yes, you asked the question, and the answer is very simple. Honestly, Mike Zuckerberg would have withered and died in Ghana. So the question is, what is it about us, and what do we do to make sure that the Zuckerberg of this world are able to thrive in this environment? Okay, so that's really the situation. I don't have any problem saying that Mark Zuckerberg wouldn't have survived, or his idea wouldn't have seen the light of day if he were born and lived in this country, regardless of his intelligence.
So, Kofi, I'll come back to Bob in the studio. He said, by the way, that I should have mentioned KNUST and not Legon. I should have mentioned. Bob is very protective of Legon. So just the fact that I use Legon instead of KNUST is giving him palpitations in the studio. But Mr. Henson, Mr. Bentel, big question. You contend that the environment we have created wouldn't have made Facebook a global phenomenon. You add that Mark Zuckerberg would probably have withered and died. Is it a product of the level we are at our developmental journey and our being not yet ready or capable to handle a technological innovation of that magnitude? Or is it our attitude that just does not enable growth and ideas? Which of these two is it?
It is the environment we have created and the fact that we have not taken full advantage of our potential to create a good society. It is not about individual intelligence. It's about creating a good society. A good society is one that can take an average person and make that person super, successful. And we have not succeeded in doing that. So you need a lot of personal effort in order to get to a certain appreciable level of success. And that is too difficult. You cannot build, much on that one. Okay, we need to combine our individual intelligence into something that builds a society that helps people to rise up. It's like Dr. Otabo talked about a travelator. Okay, you are moving forward, but something else is moving you faster forward. That we have not been able to do. Indeed, somehow we've managed to do the reverse. We have a society which almost eats up its successful children. It's so difficult, you have to struggle alone, and the slightest thing you are knocked down and you may not be able to rise up again. So that building of a great society, or a society where you can take an average person and make that person super, is where we are lacking, and that is why we have all these problems and they tend to be magnified. I think that's what we should focus on.
Stay on the line with me, Mr. Bentley, because I'm going to come back to you on the three things that give you sleepless nights when you think about Ghana, Africa, and the black people for that matter. But let me come back to the studio. Let me talk to Prof. Henson. You were at some point nodding your head passively, but at some points nodding even more intensively. Which of the points that Mr. Bentel made, which points struck you the most out of the points that Mr. Bentel generally made?
It's the environment issue. I mean, there's nothing more debilitating than hearing people say, have you seen this guy anywhere before? Have you seen it? I mean, the issue is, if we are going to run Ghana and Africa only based on old paradigms, when are we going to leapfrog anyone? I mean, these are questions we need to ask ourselves, because in this whole artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analytics type of age, you can't afford to dwell only on what you know.
Right.
But somehow, some leaders, some people who have clout almost feel threatened when an issue that is unconventional for them is thrown up, because their comfort zone is usually around what they know and what they've seen done before. So even when there are obvious better options, they have a major challenge in accepting new ways of doing things. I mean, Facebook was certainly a game changer, and I'm sure the reason is not because it's Mark Zuckerberg or anything, but it's because nobody would have seen that platform before, and the question would be, why this? Don't you already have something? So I think that discussion about have you seen this done anywhere before, I think as a concern we need to move away from that, right? Because the game-changing ideas, nobody has seen them before. So the more we open up to those sorts of things, the better it will be for all of us. But closely allied to that is also the issue of we are not very integrative in the way we do our things. We are sporadic. There's no line that runs through the way we think through. So we are not concerted, we are not integrated. And I know you were teasing me about the university naming thing, but it's so fascinating for me because today I was watching TV and there was some lady who was saying the father should be named after something because the father is big and the father was teaching Europeans. And I was thinking to myself, have we done any research on university naming and university brands? Have we done some sort of brand perception audit? Have we done some global positioning study on our universities? There's something in a name. So when you say Albert can be an addition or a subtraction to a university.
Or a division.
Or a division. but it affects the university in a certain way. So,
not to interrupt you, but this point you make is a very sensitive point, because my next point would have been how much of the nature of our politics,
very much,
how has the nature of our politics destroyed our ability to have consensus on some very basic things. Listen,
I hear you.
Blue is blue,
absolutely,
and 12 inches make a foot.
That's right.
It doesn't matter which side of the political divide you belong to.
Very much.
I mean, how do we get beyond the point where in certain waters, listen, 13 inches can become 1 foot, depending on who is defending a position.
Very
so
much.
You ask yourself, where do we draw the line and say, listen, beyond all our strong perceptions and orientations, at least there are some basic
It's because we don't like using evidence, we don't like using data, we don't like using science, and we talk more than we act in most instances. So
we'll introduce a new segment today called the Data is King segment.
Okay.
And it's just to drive us all towards a culture of using data to make decisions and not emotions
and intuitions.
Let me come to the issue of what is it that makes you unhappy, because we've talked about, I know we've kind of veered towards it, but let's just point to one issue that you say this is something that we shouldn't allow. We should just not allow it. So we've talked about what we are doing well in, what could be potentially the game changers, the trigger points, the springboards for our nation, for our continent. What about the things that we have no business allowing in the 21st century, and by extension in the mid of April 2019? What are the things we shouldn't be allowing? Let me start with you,
okay,
Prof.
So point number one, leaders who do not know how to live beyond themselves. That's one of my biggest pet peeves with this beautiful continent of Africa. You are there to transform the institution, not your personal fortune. I think it's something that we need to speak about boldly so we can find a good way forward. So leaders should not focus on self. They should come and be game changers. Number two, we should use more insight and develop better strategy. That's the data evidence-based thing. Number three, can we talk less and act more? We have the most beautiful workshops and talk shops. When it comes to translating the ideas into actionable things that can bring change, bring us profit, it tends to be a gargantuan problem. So number one, leaders who do not know how to live beyond themselves. Number two, no insight, bad strategy. Number three, we talk too much and we act very little. Those are my three pet peeves.
It is 31 minutes past the hour of 7. If you just joined us and you're wondering what is happening here, this is not Parliament. This is a discussion about the statement made in March 1957 by our late president, then Prime Minister Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who said the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. I can't master the kind of tone he used to say it, but one thing is certain, he meant it very much, and he said it with a lot of conviction. But obviously, it's a statement that is contested by some, agreed to by some, and the evidence is there on the ground that in some areas we've done well, but in other areas too we have not done well. I mean, that one, no matter where you stand, it's evident that in some areas we are still struggling very much. From the perspective of Prof. Hinson, there are three things that he thinks we need to look at: how to live, leaders who should live beyond themselves. By the way, in your own personal study, in historic times and in contemporary times, would you point to any examples of people that you see by their actions, directions, positioning, you will say that the focus is on living beyond themselves? Are there examples that you feel proud of sometimes?
Was Ket Masire in Botswana?
Botswana, yes.
Yeah, I think that guy was phenomenal. I mean, Botswana, I think he's one of the signposts for excellence in that country. And anytime I think of that guy, I think of somebody who came and really, really wanted to make a change. So I'll give that man a thumbs up. I think Professor Adair did some phenomenal work at Gimple as well, because before he got there, he was seen as stoic, old school public sector. But by the time he had finished with it, I think some really fundamental transformations had gone on. So I think that, one more thing, sorry. So leaders who tend to live beyond themselves are sometimes not the most personable creatures God ever created, because in Ghana sometimes it looks like you have to be nice to everyone.
Let me corroborate what you just said. You see, I was one of the people who benefited from Professor Adair's Gimpa that he built.
Yes,
I was in the second batch of MBA students.
Yes, please.
And we loved him to bits.
Yeah.
I mean, some people didn't like him at the campus at all, but we hailed the man. Yeah. I recall a day when he used to come for leadership discussions, not lecture. The lecture is fine, but he would come for leadership thought leadership discussions, and we love those times. We would talk, we would debate.
Yeah. It's called where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah,
you can
the class of people in that.
Oh, sorry. We had a guy called Professor Stephen Achempo Nkrumah. Most of the biggest things that happen in that business who can be attributed to him.
Right.
Started the EMBA program, built the executive. I mean, like, that guy was the guy who walks into washroom to check the qualities. No long talking in between. You see, sometimes there's a long line between the cleaner and you as boss. But once you are working in there yourself, big things happen very quickly.
So Prof. comes into the class. There was a day when a lecturer, I won't tell you where he was from, but it's something that you should know. This lecturer came to teach us in an MBA class and said, everything he's teaching us about management, if they give it to him himself, he can't implement it. Right after the class, the whole class filled an assessment form and said, this guy shouldn't teach us again.
Straight away.
Within the next couple of hours, the guy was off.
Straight away.
Prof had removed him. I mean,
no long term.
Are there for you. No action there and then. All right, let me come to you, Kofi, and let's talk about the things that you say, listen, this is unacceptable in the 21st century, and for that matter, in April 2019. What will be your selection? And by the way, Kofi managed to swing to the studio, so he's here in the studio with us. That's another discussion.
Yeah, and I start from there. Look, I'm one of the people who I'm very pained about the fact that we've not lived up to Kwame Nkrumah's, position that the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. I set off around 6, and I expected to be here in 30 minutes. I came through 3 floods. It rained for 15 minutes. And this is the Winneba Road. It's a major highway. 3 floods. And I sent some pictures. I almost went back. And I asked myself, why do we do that? Okay, so is it potential, or it is moving from that potential to execution? And that is where we have major problems. And I think we've sat around too much, blamed too many different things, and just refused to do the work. And the work is a number of things. One,
let me get your checklist so we don't lose it. Let me get a checklist first, and then we'll break these things down into solutions. So flood will be number 1, or will flood be number 1, 2, number 2, and number 3?
Flood is a symptom.
Poor planning.
And the problem is that we have refused to do the work, and that's execution. And I don't want to complain because we know all the problems.
Right.
What is the work we've refused to do? One, to be able to sit down talking about the intelligence of, the black person or ourselves and whatever it is, to be able to appreciate that every problem is solvable. Every problem is solvable. Number 2, you don't have to live with the problem. Okay, we can eradicate mosquitoes. Accra can be flood free. The Dutch fought back the sea successfully. Okay, I'm getting worked up, but let me calm down. But the point is, this thing that in our mind that you have a problem, it can be solved and we can solve it. That's the first mindset thing. Then the next thing is that you can't just sit down, like Bob saying, talk, and then solve the problem. And look, we talk, and bring half-baked Europeans. We pay them 3 times their salaries in Europe to come and solve the problem they never solve. And we end up giving the job to Ghanaians who also don't solve it. We can do it. It takes intellectual heavy lifting. Development is thinking intensive. We are lazy. We don't like to think. You know, I mean, even when it comes to solving these our flat things, I wonder how many engineers are involved. And for the life of me, I don't know why. Let it be the Ministry of Works and Housing or whatever, okay? Just float a competition, put $1 million on it. And Abed, if you like, check how much money they use this year alone in trying to fight floods. 4 people have already died. I'm saying, if you gave me all the power, if I had it today, I would say, here's $1 million. I need teams of engineers to give me ideas for solving Accra's floods, not in 1 year. Give me a 5-year plan, give me a 10-year plan, and give me a 20-year plan.
That's it.
20 years is the year 2000. Look, we're talking about the year 2020. Vision 2020 in this country was a huge issue. Next year is 2020. We've done nothing. Nothing. From the Kaswa Tobu to Kaneshi, 3 floods, 15 minutes of rain. All right? So, get down and do the work. You understand? So that intellectual heavy lifting, which we are capable of doing, and I'm saying, look, go and check all the flood, defenses they are building and ask how many engineers are involved.
Right.
And I can tell you for a fact that in my MBA class in Legon, the best students were engineering students. Because they could knock out the maths, they could do the finance, they could do everything. And you ask them, why are you doing finance when we need engineers? They say, engineering doesn't pay, nobody respects you. They'll give their job to some contractor who will go and pick, masons and laborers, and they'll go do your job. Next year, we are back to the same place again. So the reasons why we have these problems, I don't want to talk problems, I want to talk solutions. Let us have these things in our minds and then get to work on it. Get execution on it. I don't know if you got everything.
22 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock. If you just joined us, this is Springboard, your virtual university. We have having our pros and cons discussion about the African or the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. And it actually was not just a statement that was made in isolation. He said this is to show that, or this is to prove that. So the first president of this country was very convinced that he was making that statement to counter a previous perception. Now, interestingly, Kofi Bentil put on his Facebook page not too long ago that the African was therefore incapable. Obviously, it's a sign of his anger and his frustration at our inability to solve some of the things that confront us. But hey, we have a job to do. As they say in the hymn, we have a charge to keep and a God to glorify. Let me bring all this together and take a minute off to swing to our data is king segment. And interestingly, I have 2 people who are very marketing oriented in the studio, and so I'm going to start with a marketing related or customer service related small piece of information, and it's going to be a new segment that we will introduce, and our colleague Amos is spearheading that segment. He's the head of our research desk. What we're trying to do is to say, listen, every single Sunday, let's just drop one little chunk of data. It could just be the population of this country, just so that if you are trying to plan a product, you know your market, the market potential.
That's
you don't
right.
plan beyond it.
That's right.
It may not be gargantuan, as they say, or phenomenal data, but it's just basic, simple things that if you collated will give you information for decision making. Underpinning this whole segment is the idea that there's opportunity in information. So today I'm going to start with a very, very simple statistic on customer service put together by the Customer Experience magazine in the UK that says that for every 1 customer that complains, 26 others leave saying nothing. There are Bob, I'm sure there are a couple of others that will say 24, 25, but basically let's round it up that for every 1 that complains, 26 others leave without saying anything. That means that if you get the benefit of one customer complaining, don't ignore them. There are 27 of them in all. Only one spoke. The remaining 26 voted with their feet. So if you run a business, you run a church, you run a political party, you run a government, you run anything, and you get one person making a complaint, don't say shut up. That is one out of 27 who has been gracious enough to give you feedback. The cheapest resource in management is feedback. And so that complaining customer could just have given you the most priceless gift for running your organization. And that's our Data is King segment. 1 minute of just data that could help you move your business forward. Let me play you the song This Far by Grace by Reverend Edwin Dassin. When I come back, let's see how we can push these solutions beyond the Springboard studios. And let me dedicate this song to guess who? Reverend Edwin Dassin himself. Today is his wedding anniversary. It's for his wedding anniversary as well as his birthday that fell this weekend. And to my colleague Ben Boahin, also at Christ Temple, let me dedicate this song to you. This Far by Grace is a song by Reverend Edwin Dassin. It's a beautiful song. And I think I should get you the ballad version one of these days. But let's play This Far by Grace by Reverend Edwin Datson. When I come back, let's find out, are we able to go beyond the talk to action? Are we able to do the intellectual heavy lifting? And at the end of the show, we also have the game changer segment. That word has come up 4 times today. Game changer. Is there a possibility that we can change the game and move into execution? Please don't go away. This Far by Grace is a song by Reverend Edwin Datson. We dedicate it to Reverend Edwin Datson himself, Mr. Ben Boahin of Christ Temple, and then Mr. Seth Ni Ayikwe. I'm sure he's listening to this discussion because he's another person who is very passionate about solutions for the African continent and particularly for Ghana. How do we do this intellectual heavy lifting? And I like the fact that he says development is thinking intensive. And that form. All right, so let me just quickly get your thoughts on the Data is King segment before we move to our solutions. So, Bob, I know you will. How critical is data for decision making, and why is this particular one important?
So, in 2 weeks, we are launching the first ever Marketing Excellence Week in the department where I'm head of department. And the first workshop we are running is a workshop on data analytics, and marketing ROI optimization. Basically, we are trying to get people to understand that, look, nowadays everything is insight driven, and the more granular the data you have, the more you can target your approaches to all your value chain stakeholders, customers, suppliers, whoever. So we on that side are really preparing to use this analytics discourse to change the way we do stuff. But you are the interviewer, but let me ask you one question back. So you notice universities are springing up like mushrooms across this country. And I hear, last count, we have 200 plus tertiary institutions in Ghana. Have you ever seen a comprehensive skill gap audit report before, where we have a clear sense of industry by industry, how many engineers we need in the next 10, 20, 50 years, how many marketers we need? We talk around these issues for yonks, but we don't get around to drilling down and finding out what critical data points should inform the national policy articulation and the strategy that drives that policy. But it's not a national problem alone. Look, public sector, those gaps are there. Private sector, those gaps are there. I think Africa should move from intuition planning to evidence-based planning. I think our lives will be phenomenally improved.
But it's a point you made earlier on, and I like the way you summarize it right now. We should move away from intuition planning,
yes, to evidence-based planning.
Right. I think it's a point, and I can tell you what. I mean, on a very personal note, redesigning Springboard, Springboard Roadshow,
yes,
it met a lot of resistance. People are saying, why move the program away from this region? We said we are sending it to them in an even more integrated way. You don't understand.
Absolutely.
So we moved the program from a 10-city event,
absolutely,
at a point even 15 cities and 3 countries,
absolutely,
to 3 locations, and yet we are able to reach 1 million people because we found out that the best way to go global is to go global with technology, not with physical presence.
Insights.
It was just purely based on feedback and research.
It's insight.
Interesting.
Right. Well, so see,
evidence-based.
Yes. You see,
away from intuition-based.
Absolutely. And I've always said there are no brain cells in your heart. Okay, we are feeling, the negative side of what Bob said earlier about our so-called humanness and all that.
Yeah.
This is the negative side.
Right. I was asking about the potential negatives in that.
Yeah, we are too intuitive. We feel like this, then we do it. That's and everybody's talking about it. There are no brain cells in your heart. Use your head. And your head also does not have romantic views about things. It calculates hard, cold figures. This thing about data, let me put it this way. Many things that are nice to have, is useful to have. Data is not one of those things. Data is crucial.
It is.
Data is information. Your decision making is as good as the information you have, which is the data.
100%.
Let me just tell you a short story. There was this company that gave huge discounts. It was a travel agency. Huge discounts to one of their big clients. And they gave them huge discounts, thousands of dollars worth, because they travel a lot. And they said, look, these are good clients. They give us a lot of business, so let us give them big discounts. And they gave them big discounts. Then one day, a consultant like me and Bob was called and said, look, just check with your top 10 clients.
Yeah.
What is it that you do for them which makes them come back to you?
Exactly.
Apparently, this big client over whom they have spent or given thousands of dollars worth did not care about money. In fact, if they had increased their prices, they would have still come to them. You know why? Because they give them a 90-day payment window.
That's it.
Which is what they prefer.
Which is what they wanted.
They don't need discounts.
In their system, that's what they needed. And therefore, the 90-day credit window, if they doubled their prices, they would have still patronized them.
That's it.
Now, that data, not having that simple piece of information, was costing them a lot of money, and they were shooting the wrong people.
Let me bridge the two thoughts. So you've talked, and I deliberately used this one to feed into our discussion. So we are looking at issues that we say we can't go on living like this. And one of the things that has come up is flooding. And you're saying that we just have no excuse. Now, how do we merge this penchant for?
You don't have the time for all that, but in short, this is what it is. We are not applying the necessary mental resources and not organizing ourselves well. Let me explain. Look, it's not everything that can be solved in a year. So it's not everything you set off and try to fix 1 year. Sometimes give yourself 5 years to do it.
It's our 4-year political cycle then a problem?
It's a bad excuse. It's a bad excuse. Okay, our country, yes, relies too much on politicians, but we have a whole level below them of technocrats who go beyond the 4 years. They are really our problem, not the politicians. So the 4-year cycle should not affect us if we are doing the thinking right. Okay, and I don't see anybody who, if you have a good plan beyond the 4 years, will come and say, I'm not going to do this. So we need to sit down, use this data approach, the hydrology of Africa, the maps, and put engineers to it. Look, when the US did the new fighter plane, they have more technology than anybody in building fighter planes. They use the competitive solution seeking approach. They pick the best and they put a competition in place and say, give us ideas of what to do. They give them money to build it, and then they pick them. And that's how you got the F-35, which now all major nations who are doing fighter projects are buying. My point is this: if even you like, float, like I said in the beginning, a competition that says that somebody should give us a 5 or 10 or 20-year plan. And you'll be amazed that some undergrads are going to come up with a very good plan.
Yep. Right.
Over and over again, we seem to be tackling this thing, but I'm saying the result is showing that we are not doing it right. It should be data-driven.
So data-driven, and you
scientific approach.
You, Prof. Henson, are saying that in your point number 2 is that if we use more insight and develop more strategies, we will get the results. Would you say that that point is corroborated by this issue of data-driven solutions?
I would,
right.
Very, very much. And but there's also a discipline regarding data usage,
right?
Because intuition matters occasionally, but data should be your default mode,
right?
And we should spend as much resources developing insights as we go spending money on executions that are not based on any solid evidence.
Right.
I mean, like across, I think Ghana's economy can multiply. If, for instance, I've heard Kofi say for several years that tourism unaided is like what, third foreign exchange earner. And I've heard him say so many times that if we had better insights regarding the potential, we could do more.
And it's evident. Go to Gambia and don't travel far. Just go to Gambia and South Africa.
I lived in the Gambia for 13 years. I was living in Fajara. I know what you're talking about. And Gambia doesn't have much except tourism.
That's all they have.
You know,
and granules.
and granules. But we could do much, much more. And I think
but you know,
yes, sir.
What I like about South Africa, the South African version, is that they create the tourist sites. Not that they exist too. They create them. They build them.
But
the Sedi Cultural Village is built based on insight.
It is based
Sun City is built. So they don't have forts and castles that were there. They build them. They plan and build them.
Do you know that you can turn the University of Ghana
into a tourist attraction?
What are you talking about?
You know what?
You can have a historical tour at the University of
Both
Ghana.
of you must sign up to come back to this show. Let me move to the our special segment that we call the Game Changer segment. So one of the things that we've introduced as we repackage this entire show is to take time to create a segment every single day that looks around the world and finds somebody that is doing something that is you're saying, this is really worth taking a look at. And we found different expressions that we are following, and it's quite heartwarming to note that we've singled out teachers that donated 80% of their salary. One teacher won $1 million for donating 80% of his salary. Is in Kenya. And we are looking at different countries, different examples of game changers. And that's Juju's segment. So Juju, let's take in 2 minutes your game changer segment for today. What is the topic for today?
So this week, I'm excited to present our first female game changer, Dr. Katie Bowman. Dr. Bowman has been in the news this week for her pioneering work in producing the first ever image of a black hole. For years, the scientific consensus was that black holes could not be photographed. This is because black holes are so powerful, they suck in everything, even light, which is the basis for all images. To capture an image of a black hole using traditional astronomy, scientists would need a telescope the size of Earth itself. Now, the problem needs to be tackled from a different perspective. Instead of building a gargantuan telescope, scientists sought to merge visual data from 8 telescopes around the world. This is where Dr. Bowman came in. She was enlisted to develop the algorithm to compile and interpret all the visual data into one photo. Now, on Wednesday, over $50 million and 10 years worth of research culminated in the imaging of a black hole 50 million light years away. Though Dr. Bowman was rightly celebrated for her contribution to advancing our collective scientific boundaries, our game changer this week is teamwork. Describing the breakthrough, Dr. Bowman wrote, "No one person or algorithm made this image. It required the amazing talent of a team of scientists from around the globe and years of hard work to pull off this seemingly impossible feat. Indeed, the process of imaging the black hole required the work of more than 200 scientists from different disciplines. Now, in our daily lives, we tend to hear of superstar scientists like Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking, Marie Curie, and now Dr. Bowman. However, the nature of scientific research is that an immense amount of collaborative work goes into the discoveries that we celebrate on a daily basis. As our collective scientific knowledge has grown, it's become harder to make major discoveries, so we collaborate more. In a study of 68 reputed scientific journals, the number of papers with over 1,000 authors has jumped from 0 to over 100 between 2012 and 2018, and the number of average authors has quadrupled from 9 in 2012 to 39 in the physical sciences. Teamwork is critical in everyday life. Working in teams can improve problem solving, boost morale, and maximize staff involvement. In fact, 75% of employers rate collaboration as very important. Now to close, I would like to leave you with a quote from Andrew Carnegie. Teamwork is the fuel that allows common people to attain uncommon results. This week, let's work together to achieve uncommon results. This has been the Game Changer with Jojo Okran. Have a phenomenal week.
Thank you very much, Jojo Okran, for that segment. And is it me or I saw the thoughts of, interestingly, Professor Hinson and Kofi Bentil?
Me, I want to comment on it right now.
Let me start with you, Kofi.
So the black hole thing, right. Some of us, when we are bored, we read a bit of that stuff. He says something. He says, it's so dense, it cannot be photographed.
Right.
This is the position of the science. Edwin Hawkins and all those big men, they've said these things. First thing, one of the things I said is the mindset that it can be done.
Right.
Look, if you have geniuses like Einstein, Hawkins, and co., who have proven it over years that this is the state of the matter, it cannot be photographed, then you have this woman attempting to do it. And he talked about $50 million. Talk about a whole teamwork.
10 years, 200 scientists.
I see a lot there. Now, compare photography a black hole to solving the flat of Accra. There's a difference in that stretch.
Right.
But somebody said it can be done. They assemble the resources, they execute, and he's done it.
Let me give you a minute to wrap up on this. I hate when I'm stopping the discussion at the point where it's juiciest. But Kofi, takeaways from this, fusing the discussion we've had, the data is king segment, this teamwork concept, and actually inherent there is this whole idea about data and about research solving problems.
Doing the impossible.
What will be your takeaway?
I'll put it in ordinary terms. There were mosquitoes in the US. They were killing people there. They've eradicated mosquitoes in most of the US. It's doable. All right. Floods. The Dutch had a problem with the sea. The sea was just eating them up. In fact, they are below sea level. They have stopped the sea from eating them up
and created canals that allow you to travel
inland
all the way
to all the things. Right? Yeah. All right. Now, Finland had one of the worst education systems in Europe. Today, they have one of the best education systems in the world. We can solve floods. Let's sit down, invest the heavy thinking, call the people who know what to do, give ourselves time, and then deal with it. Somebody dealt with a black hole. It may not be, exotic, or it may not be something that you can connect to easily, but think about the fact that somebody gave it time, executed, and succeeded.
The average number of people writing a paper has increased from 0 to 39 to 100. In the academic field, is this something that you are experiencing in collaboration with other? I know one of your recent books was written with a couple of other people. Is this something that is growing, that leveraging of various minds to solve an issue? Let me give you a minute to close with that.
95% of all work I'm doing right now is collaboration with people from all over the globe. It's the way to do it, because not only do you draw on different energies, the refined product is much better. But my closing words will be this. Across all sectors of this beautiful continent of Africa, the platform we need to properly take off and enhance excellence on the continent is innovation. We need an innovation mindset in public sector, private sector, not-for-profit spaces, and that's how we are really going to take off. Thank you.
I want to say a big thank you to you, Professor Robert Hinson and Kofi Bentil. I love talking to you guys. I learned so much, and it's a stimulating discussion. And let's do this one more time. We'll make it happen again. So, coming up next is a Walk with Jesus, and the discussion is about the benefits of the blood of Christ. The host is Reverend Ransford Abosi, and the guest, Prophet Samuel Frimpong. And I trust that it will be a beneficial discussion as we enter the Passion Week and build up to the death and resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. I want to say a big thank you to the virtual academic board chaired by my boss, Comfort, with the support of Matthew, Priscilla, Amos, Emmanuel, Jojo, and I hope I got everybody right. All right, so I want to say a big thank you to you all. Let's do this again next week, and happy Easter in advance. God bless you. God bless you, and God bless you.
Bless you.
Central University has new programs for the 2018-2019 academic year. BA in Sociology and Social Work, BSc in Psychology and Planning, MA in Teaching English.
Here's where we turn around. Come